What's going on, guys? I'm here with my Spider-Man and Venom tier list, updated with No Way Home. I will not get into No Way Home spoilers. I did a full-on spoiler-free and spoiler combined review for that, so if you want to see my thoughts on that, just watch that video. Every other movie on this list I will get into spoilers for, so just a fair warning there. So without further ado, I did rearrange these to be in the order that the movies came out, because earlier they were in some kind of weird order. Whoever made this, I'm not sure what kind of order they were in, but I rearranged it because I think it would make more sense for me to put them on the list this way. So the first Spider-Man's going on the B tier. I think this is a very solid origin story. I think it tells the origin story of Peter Parker very well. I think Tobey Maguire is a really good Peter Parker. Not the greatest Spider-Man. I wish he would quip a little more like Garfield and Holland Spider-Man do, but very solid. Green Goblin is a good villain. I wouldn't quite call him great. I think he was actually better in No Way Home, which we'll get to. But he was very good here. The performance was great. Willem Dafoe did a great job of playing both sides, Norman Osborn and Green Goblin. Aspects of his performance don't age super well, like the laugh and everything. And then, obviously, the suit is ridiculous, the Power Rangers outfit. And the CGI with some of the battles doesn't age super well either, and the action in general isn't the best. But it establishes Peter Parker's morals and who he is going to be as a hero, which I really liked. The stuff with Uncle Ben and the stuff with Aunt May is all great. It kind of starts off his relationship with Harry, which is a very interesting arc throughout these three movies. The MJ stuff, I don't exactly love MJ in these three movies. She can bug me at times, and I'll talk about that more as we talk about the other two, but like in this one, she's with a lot of different guys, and she kind of, the way she talks to Peter and eggs him on, like, oh, is that the reason you care about this? Like, come on, we know what you're doing here. A little bit annoying, but I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it's a very, very solid origin story overall. But I think that Spider-Man 2 basically surpasses the first one in pretty much every way. I think it has a better villain. I think Doc Ock is better than Green Goblin, at least in these first two movies. He has a great arc in this movie. The way he turns into a villain and then gets taken over by the robotic arms and then redeems himself by the end. Just such a great character. Peter has a phenomenal arc throughout this movie. He basically has to decide whether he wants to be Spider-Man or not. Is it important to him? Not so much, but it's important to the city. The city needs him. He doesn't need Spider-Man, but the city does. And I love how he learns that lesson by the end and makes the right choice and decides to continue being Spider-Man. The city of New York is a character throughout this movie, which a lot of people talk about, especially, like the train sequence, which is one of the best parts of the movie. Overall, by far, the action is great. And then you got the stuff with the citizens helping Peter and keeping his identity secret for him and then standing up to Doc Ock for him. Lots of great stuff there. I really liked that part of the movie. J. Jonah Jameson, of course, is great in this one, as he was in the first. I forgot to talk about that, but he's easily one of the best parts of these three movies. It's just super funny, and I always am enjoying every minute of screen time that he has. The only thing I don't love about this movie is the fact that, while I did love the arc that Peter goes on, where he decides not to be Spider-Man, and then eventually realizes that he needs to be because the city needs him, I don't love that he loses his powers because he's sad. Now, a lot of you are going to defend that and say that there's science behind that. I understand. The way that they executed it in the movie, for me, has never worked for me. Never quite worked for me. So that's one of the only things, but the actual arc that he goes on and the lessons that he learns are great. Just what leads to it, I wish they could have done a little bit better. That's never quite worked for me. And then the MJ stuff, again, a little iffy, although I did like the ending with her where she basically decides, like, yeah, I know you don't want me to be, with you because it's too dangerous and whatever, but I know the risks, and I'm making the decision to be with you. And he's like, all right. And they finally do that, which is great. I mean, they kind of undo it in 3, which is annoying. But I love that ending, despite the fact that she left her husband to be on their wedding night, which is really not cool. But putting that aside, it's a nice little moment at the end of the movie between them, and it's what we've been waiting for all along. So just such a great movie overall. Doc Ock, one of the best villains on this entire list, and in comic book movies, period. Great arc for Peter, just so much good stuff. Spider-Man 3, on the other hand, not so much. That's going on the F tier, unfortunately. I really don't like this movie. There's way too much going on. It's overstuffed, too many villains, too many plot lines, and because of that, none of them land. They should have really focused on the Peter and Harry relationship and made Harry the main villain, because there is some good stuff with Harry in there, and I think by the end of the movie, and the end of the trilogy, the way that the arc between Harry and Peter and Harry's specific arc, the way that comes to a conclusion is satisfying and fulfilling. But some of the execution in this movie actually getting there was pretty strange. Like, the stuff with him losing his memory was pretty wonky. So they could have done that better. Venom should not have been in this movie at all. And it's well known that Raimi didn't want him in the movie, but the studio mandated that he'd be in it, and he just shoved him in, shoehorned him in, and didn't really know what to do with him because he doesn't even understand the character, so that was totally unnecessary. Sandman could have maybe been interesting if they got a little bit more time with him, were able to flesh that out more. But again, because there was too much going on, they couldn't. I don't like that they retconned Uncle Ben's death. I don't know what the point of that was. There's a nice theme of forgiveness throughout this movie, but they could have done it. I think it could have executed that better. Just, oh God, the emo Peter stuff was horrible. Some of the worst stuff I've ever seen. The idea there with Dark Peter, there's something interesting there, but they could have done it better. And I wish they had. MJ stuff was bad again. They reverted back again to this weird thing of will they, won't they? Like, at the end of Spider-Man 2, you finally establish that they're together and she's okay with it. Why do you have to go back in that Spider-Man 3? Really annoying. So, just overall, a very frustrating movie. Strange editing, too. Like, there's a couple scenes, like, the way they go into Peter's fight with Harry, it's very weird. I thought it was like a dream sequence at first. It was just very sudden and jarring. Same with the Sandman Venom fight in the alley. Like, what exactly is happening here? This really came out of nowhere. So, just overall, total mess of a movie. It's the worst of all these, even worse than The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which we'll talk about. But it's a disappointing movie. The Amazing Spider-Man, I'm going to put on the B tier, just below the first one. I think both of them are very solid origin stories. I think that they both do things better and worse than the other. The best part of this movie, and both of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, by far, is Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, Peter and Gwen's relationship. Easily the best part of the movie. Mark Webb is very good at the character interactions and the character relationships. Does such a great job with that. The stuff with Uncle Ben is great, maybe even better than in the first Spider-Man, except that they changed the way he says, with great power comes great responsibility. Totally unnecessary, and that's another reason why I prefer the first Tobey one over the first Amazing Spider-Man, is because it feels like in this one they tried to make things different without really making them different. Like the way that he changes his line, and the way that he gets killed by a store, someone robbing a store instead of the guy from the wrestling arena. It's like, these things are really unnecessary. You're just making them different for the sake of them being different. But again, like I said, Garfield is great. I think he's the best actor that's played Spider-Man. I think he's a really good Spider-Man. I've even come around to him as Peter Parker, although I do think he's a little bit too cool. The thing with the basketball scene, how did nobody realize something was up when that happened? A little bit weird. Lizard is certainly not the greatest villain. The performance was fine, and it was an interesting idea. But the actual execution of him and what his plan ends up being, what he's trying to do, totally ridiculous and cliche, and had kind of lost me by the end of the movie. I do like Dennis Leary in the movie. I do like how it ends with him dying and Peter making a promise to him, and how that plays into the second movie. Martin Sheen was a great Uncle Ben, and I love the stuff with Aunt May. Again, all the character interactions, the best part of the movie. Emma Stone is my favorite of all of the love interests in these movies, so there's something there. And I had a good time watching this movie, even though it certainly wasn't great, and the villain was weak, and the action wasn't great. I think it's still a pretty solid origin story, and Garfield is an awesome Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, unfortunately, is going on the E tier. I don't like this movie. I think they made the same mistake as Spider-Man 3 with having too many villains and too many plot lines. Rhino should not have been in this movie at all. What the hell was that? I don't know if it was Paul Giamatti or the directing or the writing or some combination of all the above, but that was just horrible. one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I couldn't believe, like, people told me it was bad, and I'm like, it can't be that bad. I watched it, holy shit, that was terrible. Can't believe they actually left that in the movie. Electro, there's some interesting ideas there, and when he turns into Electro, he's kind of cool, even though I don't exactly like the look of him. He kind of looks like a video game character. But getting there, and what they did with him, with the comb-over and the glasses and the way he acts, was just too much for me. It seemed at odds with the tone of the rest of the movie and both of these movies. Very strange decision. He was much better in No Way Home, which I'll get to as well. Harry, while there was some interesting stuff there, I liked the design of him. I thought the performance was good. That plotline was way underdeveloped. And it could have been good. There was only one scene between him and Peter where they establish that they're friends and they have a nice conversation. It is a good scene, but then all of a sudden he's bad. Then all of a sudden he's Green Goblin, and then he comes and kills Gwen Stacy. It's like, damn, that could have been so good. But that whole plotline was way undercooked and could have been fleshed out so much better. He should have been in the first movie. Damn, so disappointing. Although, again, the stuff with Garfield and Emma Stone, easily the best part of this movie, just like it was with the first one. Everything to do with them is great. You know, Peter seeing her dad everywhere and feeling guilty about the promise he made to him. Gwen wanting to always be around in the fight, and Peter not wanting her to be there, and that ends up resulting in her death, which is one of the most gut-wrenching scenes, probably the most gut-wrenching scene in this entire list. So all that stuff is great. Everything else is pretty bad. It's a mess of a story. I didn't really care about what they were trying to do with the backstory of his parents. So many plot lines, too many villains, and even though certainly some great emotional moments at the core of the movie, too long, too bloated, too much going on. So I can't really say it's a movie I really want to rewatch. Maybe just parts of it, but wouldn't want to sit through the whole thing again. Spider-Man Homecoming is, I guess, all the first are going on the B tier, and I'm putting that ahead of the other two, mainly because Michael Keaton is possibly the best villain on this entire list. And yes, ahead of Doc Ock, ahead of Green Goblin. He's amazing. Easily the best part of this movie. As soon as you find out that he's Liz's dad, you're like, holy shit, that's a legit twist that caught me off guard. And I was like, whoa. And then the car scene that comes after that, best stuff in the movie. Some of the best stuff on this entire list. Keaton absolutely killed that role. And I just had a lot of fun with the movie overall. Tom Holland is a very good Peter Parker, very good Spider-Man. It's a very fun high school movie. I like Tony's inclusion as a mentor, although I'm not a big fan of the Iron Man Jr. stuff when it comes to the Spider-Man suit itself, like the AI and everything. Do we have to get to that right away? Why couldn't we have just gotten some normal Spider-Man stuff at first? It feels like they got to that way too fast, and we don't want Spider-Man to have all this technology. So that was unfortunate. And then it's just a very safe movie. They don't do anything, bombastic or have these huge stakes or have these big, massive emotions or character arcs, but it succeeded very well in what it was trying to do. The third act certainly was pretty underwhelming. The action in general wasn't the best, but I had a very good time with this movie, and it's certainly a very fun high school movie. Then came Venom, the first one. I'm going to put it on D tier. Not a big fan of the first Venom. I saw some potential there, and we'll get to Let There Be Carnage, which I thought was much better. I thought they fixed a lot of the issues I had with the first one. But this movie, while there's a great relationship between Eddie and Venom, and Tom Hardy had a great performance, easily the best part of the movie, and that's why I saw potential for a sequel there. But everything surrounding that was pretty bad. It took way too long for Venom to even come into the movie. It was convoluted. The pacing was weird. The tone was very inconsistent. They couldn't decide what kind of genre they want the movie to be. The character of Venom acted very inconsistently, kind of decided out of nowhere that he wants to save the Earth. Like, where did that come from? That's a pretty massive jump from what you were trying to do before. The CGI final battle between two dark aliens at night, you can't tell what the hell is going on. It's just like a CGI blob fest. So that was pretty lame. And then the worst sin this movie commits is it's not rated R. So the one thing you expect to get out of a Venom movie, which is watching Venom kill people and bite their heads off, they cut away every time that happens. So overall, a very frustrating movie. But I did see the potential for a sequel because of the relationship between Eddie and Venom. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is going on the A tier ahead of Spider-Man 2. Now, a lot of you are going to put this in the S tier. I'm not quite there. I don't think it's exactly perfect. I think it's a great movie. I have a very good time with it. I think the soundtrack is phenomenal. I listen to it all the time, songs from that movie. I think all the voice actors do a great job. Miles Morales is a very fun and relatable character. Peter B. Parker is a great mentor who's kind of lost his way, and then him and Miles kind of help each other out, and they learn from each other. Spider-Gwen is awesome. Spider-Ham, Spider-Man Noir, played by Nicolas Cage, who might be my favorite character in the movie. All great. All that stuff is great. I like that, his dad, the stuff with his dad talking to him through the door is great. Just such an awesome movie with great lessons learned and amazing action and very creative and inventive animation style. Took me a while to get used to, but once I was used to it, I absolutely loved it. My couple issues with this movie, first of all, I don't like the way Kingpin looks. And people I know are okay with it because he looks like that in the comics, and this movie's like a comic book come to life, which for the most part I loved. But when everyone else in the movie looks like regular people, and there's this giant guy with a small head, it's like, how exactly do you explain that? It doesn't make any sense. That was a bit much for me, even though the character was good, and I liked the performance and the depth to his character. I also didn't feel like the Aaron Davis twist was quite earned. He only had one scene with Peter. And in that scene, you do get to understand the relationship. But when we end up finding out that he's the Prowler and then his subsequent death, I didn't think that was quite earned. It was a little bit undercooked to me. And I know most people, almost everyone, will disagree with that. Peter's reaction... Jesus Christ, Peter. Miles. Did I say Peter before? I'm sorry. Miles' reaction to it was genuine, and I felt that, and I felt his dad's reaction to it as well. I just thought the overall way they got to that could have been developed just a little bit more. Everything else about the movie was phenomenal, though. I loved it. Spider-Man Far From Home, I'm putting on the B tier as well, slightly ahead of Homecoming. This is tough. They're very close to me. I think they both do a lot of the same things right. I think each of them do certain things better and certain things worse. The reason I'm taking Far From Home slightly ahead of Homecoming is I prefer the story a little more. I like MJ better as a love interest than Liz, and I think that the action and visuals are much better in this movie. The third act is much better. Some of the visuals with Mysterio are phenomenal, some of the best visuals on this list and in the entire MCU as well. I liked what they did with Mysterio's character. I didn't even mind the exposition dump scene. I like Nick Fury's inclusion, even though he ends up being Talos. Was that necessary? Not really. It doesn't really add anything to the movie, but it was fine. I was pretty indifferent about that. And then, obviously, the end was J. Jonah Jameson and the twist that, everyone knows who Spider-Man is. All great stuff. Peter has a great arc in this movie. There's one aspect of this movie that's a very big part of it that I kind of hate, and that's the glasses plotline. The whole idea that Tony would give this kid these dangerous glasses with all these capabilities seems wildly irresponsible to me. And the fact that he almost kills one of his classmates, a bunch of his classmates on the bus with a nuclear strike, that's easily the worst scene in the movie. And I cringe every time I watch it. It's played for laughs. Like, oh, Peter almost killed his friends. That's not very funny. I mean, that is very weird. And it makes me feel really uncomfortable that Tony would give him those glasses. But other than that, I mean, the humor is a little bit hit or miss. But other than that, I really enjoyed the movie. The glasses plotline is a huge issue for me. That's what keeps it on the B tier and not higher. Very frustrating that they did that. But everything else I thought was pretty damn good. Venom, Let There Be Carnage is going on the B tier. It's on the bottom of the B tier, but still the B tier. I think this was a vast improvement over the first one. I think it fixed a lot of my issues with the first movie. I thought the villain was better. I thought the tone was more consistent. I thought that Venom and Tom Hardy, Eddie's relationship, was even better in this movie than it was in the first, which they carried that on. Obviously, my favorite part of the first movie. Thought they slightly improved on it in this one, so I really enjoyed that. Pacing, it was a short movie, short and to the point. The final battle was much better and easier to see because it was during daytime and the CGI was better and you could The aliens were different colors, so you could tell what was going on. It improved on a lot of my issues with the first one. Still, of course, it's not high art. It's not great cinema. And I didn't really care for Naomi Harris's character. Again, it should have been rated R, especially with Carnage. Come on, guys. So much potential there with Carnage. All the, pun intended, carnage he could have caused. So, but I enjoyed it much more than the first one. Spider-Man No Way Home is going on the A tier in between Spider-Verse and Spider-Man 2. Again, I'm not quite as high on this movie as some people, calling it like the best Spider-Man movie, the best MCU movie, the best comic book movie. I think it's very good. I do. I think people are drinking the Kool-Aid just a little bit too much. And I say that as someone who puts this as my second favorite Spider-Man movie, and I absolutely love it. I think it has a great character arc for Peter. By far the best arc he's had in the entire MCU. By far Tom Holland's best performance in the entire MCU so far. He gets put through the ringer in this movie. Emotional as hell. A lot of people felt like something was missing for this version of Spider-Man. I won't get into specifics, but you get that in this movie. This makes it feel like they didn't skip the origin story. They took 3 movies to tell it. And this is the conclusion to that, and then kind of a new beginning as well. Awesome movie. The villains, all the returning villains that you see in the trailer, especially Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Electro are great. This is a much better version of Electro than the one we got in Amazing Spider-Man 2. They fix a lot of the issues with him. It doesn't really make sense that it's the same character, that it doesn't really track. But I like it so much better that I don't really care. I really don't. It's a so much better version of the character. And Green Goblin is probably even better than he was in the first Spider-Man. Again, plays both sides so well, maybe even better in this, but they don't have the ridiculous Power Rangers suit. So much good about this movie. The ending is great. The only thing I don't love, which is why it's on the A tier, not S, is the entire inciting incident and the Doctor Strange stuff with the spell and Peter, how that all goes down. It's pretty goofy. And it makes me think that Doctor Strange is not a very smart guy, but he's supposed to be. The way he plays out in the trailer is almost exactly the way he plays out in the movie, but it's even worse, even dumber in the movie. And that frustrated the hell out of me. It's like, you really couldn't have done that a better way. And then Doctor Strange in general acted very weird and inconsistent in this movie and has been very inconsistent in the MCU in general. So that was a fairly big issue I had with the movie. Some other small plot holes here and there, but other than that, I had an absolute great time with this movie. Tom Holland kills it. Easily his best performance in the MCU so far. Like I said, villains were great. Action was awesome, which I forgot to mention. Great pacing. So many great fan service moments that don't feel cheap. They feel earned. And watch my spoiler review. I get into details about all those things. But overall, I loved it. And it's on the A tier. So, just to recap, guys, I'm going to go backwards with my ranking from 11 to 1. 11, Spider-Man 3. 10, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. 9, Venom. 8, Venom Let There Be Carnage. 7, The Amazing Spider-Man. 6, The Original Spider-Man. 5, Homecoming. 4, Far From Home. 3, Spider-Man 2. 2, Spider-Man No Way Home. And 1, Into the Spider-Verse. So there you have it, guys. What's your ranking or your tier list of the Spider-Man movies? And what do you agree with me? What do you disagree with? Let me know down below. Let's have a conversation about it. I got another tier list coming. It's going to be the MCU tier list, which is going to be a lot of fun and could take a while. So look forward to that. And, subscribe. Guys, if you enjoy my content, hit the notification bell. Drop a comment. Like the video. All that stuff really, really helps the channel. So thanks for everything, and I will see you guys soon.